Hello, and welcome to our virtual book talks and activity lessons. This month's book talks will talk about books dealing with friendships. My name is Gloria Rhodes. I am the librarian at San Diego State University. Our first book today is Mrs. Katz and Tush by Patricia Polacco. I'm going to read the story to you. Larnell didn't know Mrs. Katz very well, but almost every other day his mother stopped in to see her after work. Since her husband died, she's so alone, his mother had told him. Mrs. Katz held tight to his mother's hand the day they looked at an old photo album. "That's my husband, Myron," said Mrs. Katz. "He came from Poland, like me, a long time ago. We had such a life." Then her voice broke. "We had no children, and I'll be all alone for Hanukkah and Passover." Then she cried. The next day, Larnell stopped in to see her himself. "I've been thinking," he said. "A cat had some kittens in the basement of our building. We found someone to take them all except this one. She's the runt. Nobody wants her because she is so ugly. She doesn't even have a tail." "Ugly, you say?" Mrs. Katz said. "My Myron was ugly too when he was little, but he grew up to be such a person." Mrs. Katz looked at the little kitten. "Scrawny little boobale, so small, no tail," she said as she examined the kitten closely. "Hmm, I don't know," she said doubtfully. Then she saw the look on Larnell's face. "Larnell, I'll take her," she announced, "but only if you'll come and help me with her. I've never had a cat before." Larnell promised. "A good Yiddish name I'll give her," said Mrs. Katz. "Let's see. Hmm. She has no tail. All you see is her tush. That's it. We'll call her Tush." Little Tush grew healthy and strong. Mrs. Katz cooked for her, brushed her, knitted toys for her, and even read to her. "Such a person," she said as she watched Tush play. Mrs. Katz was in love. Lionel kept his promise. He visited Mrs. Katz and Tush every day after school. There was always a fresh baked Google and a tall glass of milk waiting for him. But as much as he grew to love Tush, he also loved to listen to Mrs. Katz talk about the old country and the way times used to be. "I come from Warsaw. That's in Poland, you know. I came here to work sewing dresses in the garment district for my cousin Moshe. I didn't speak one word of English." "Then how did you talk to people?" asked Larnell. "I didn't," she answered. "A lot." "I cried in those days until I met Myron. He asked me to marry him after he tasted my Google." "I believe that," Larnell said as he ate some. "Myron and I used to vacation in the Catskills, or Borscht Resort, you know, a place for Jews to stay." "You mean Jews couldn't stay anywhere they wanted to?" Larnell asked. Mrs. Katz didn't answer. Instead, she went to a trunk and pulled out some old clothes. "My grandma told me about places she couldn't stay either," Larnell said softly. "Larnell, your people and mine are alike, you know. Trouble we've seen, happiness too, great strength we've had. You and I are alike, so much alike." Now, where was I? Oh, yes, the Catskills. "We used to dress every Sunday, and I have a costume ball," said Mrs. Katz. Then she put a record on the record player. It was old and scratched. "You hear that, Larnell?" she said. "That is what we used to dance to. It's a dance from my homeland. Here, I'll show you." They whirled around the room and laughed and giggled. As weeks passed, Larnell spent more and more time with Mrs. Katz. "Since you are almost family to me, Larnell," she said one day, "I want you to come with me to say Kaddish for my Myron. I know you're not Jewish, but Myron would have liked you. You're such a person, Larnell." At the cemetery, she read from her book. Then she asked Larnell to put a small rock on top of Mrs. Katz's headstone, Mr. Katz's headstone. "We do this to remember," she said softly. Shalom, my Myron, she murmured and wiped tears from her face. On the way home, she announced, Google, such a Google I baked for you today, Larnell. Hurry, Tush, we'll be worried for us, she said as they walked. When they got home, they called and called for Tush, but she didn't come. They looked everywhere for her. Suddenly, Mrs. Katz gasped. The window to the fire escape was open. Oh no, she cried. I forgot to shut the window before I left. Poor Bubba. She had never been outside. We'll find her, Larnell tried to reassure her. She has been acting strange lately, Mrs. Katz said through her tears. She has been trying to get out, but I was afraid that she would get hit by a car. I'll find her, Mrs. Katz, Larnell said. I won't let you down. It was getting dark. First, Mrs. Katz and Larnell looked around their building. Then they went everywhere in the neighborhood. They left notes on doors, telephone poles, and fences. They asked everyone who lived nearby, but no one had seen little Tush. That night it stormed. There was rain, awful, awful rain. Mrs. Katz hardly slept as she thought about her little Cotelet. She's such a person, she whispered. Lonnie had worried most of the night, too. What will Mrs. Katz do? He thought. Please, God, bring that little cat back to her, he said softly in his pillow. A loud knock on the front door woke Mrs. Katz. It was Larnell's father and two neighbors. Is this yours? They asked. My Boobele, little Catele, Mrs. Katz exclaimed. We found her in the back alley, soaking wet and hungry, Mr. Morris said. Thank you, Mrs. Katz said as she took Tush in her arms. After a while, Tush no longer had the least desire to go outside again, but she slept a lot, even when Larnell came to play with her. It was at my Aunt Havilah's Passover Seder that I met Myron. Did you know that? Mrs. Katz asked as she looked at Larnell. What good times they were, with lots and lots of family. Now it's just me, she said softly. Could I have a Passover dinner with you? Asked Larnell. I thought you would never ask, she exclaimed as she hugged him close. Such a Seder I'll prepare for you. Passover is a time for good food, Mrs. Katz shouted as they edged their way through the crowd in the deli. Like your people, my people were slaves too. They lived in a country that where they didn't want to be. They wanted freedom so much that they prayed to God to help them. So he sent an angel that brought death and sadness to the houses of our captors. But the angel did not visit the houses of my people. How did the angel know where the Jews lived? Arnold asked. They marked the doors. Then the angel passed over. Passover, Larnell. That's why we call this time of celebration Passover. So, Larnell, we have a big feast to celebrate, but we also remember those who had to suffer so we could be free, Mrs. Katz said. Part of the dinner is sad, and part of it is happy. As Larnell helped get out the linens and china, Mrs. Katz said, you see this tablecloth? This was our wedding chuppah, our canopy. For all these years, we have used it for holy days and celebrations. How come you have so many different dishes? Larnell asked. Because some Jews don't eat dairy and meat off the same dishes, she answered. When they sat down to Seder together, Mrs. Katz lit two candles and waved her hands over them. She read from her book, said prayers, they smiled and said, let the feast begin. They drank red wine and water. They ate bitter herbs, lamb and chicken. They had gelt fish and spicy chopped apples with potato pancakes. This bread looks like a soda cracker, Larnell explained. We call it matzo, dear. We eat it at Passover. It's flat because there's no yeast in it, so it doesn't rise. Larnell, I have hidden one piece of matzo here in the apartment. If you can find it, I have a surprise for you. The surprise was a hand knit sweater that she had made just for him. The next day, Mrs. Katz yelled out her back window to Larnell's apartment. Come quickly already, something wonderful. Larnell and his mom and dad rushed to her door. The angel of death passed over, but the angel of life didn't. Matzo tov tash. Four babies. At last, I'm a boo-boo. As the years passed, Mrs. Katz, Tush, and her descendants became part of Larnell's family. There were graduations, weddings, new babies, and finally a good dish. Larnell stood in front of the headstone. He read from her book. He placed a small rock on top of the headstone. Then he, his wife, and their children read the inscription together. Mrs. Katz Abube, such a person. Mrs. Katz and Tush by Patricia Balaco. This was also an Oprah Winfrey recommended kids book. Our next story is, I'm not going to read the entire story, but it's I'm going to tell you what happens on a hot day on Abbott Avenue by Karen English and it's illustrated by Javaka Steptoe. I'm going to ask you a question. Did you ever fight with your best friend when you were a kid and an hour later you were friends again? That's what this story is about. Two girls on the hottest day of the summer. Two friends, Kishi and Renee, are having a disagreement on a hot summer day. They do things separately from each other, but still keep an eye on each other at the same time. But when a game of double dutch starts up down the street, both girls join in the fun and enjoy a blue ice pop together. This book deals with how you can talk through conflicts and become friends again, even after you've had a disagreement. Hot Day on Abbott Avenue by Karen English, illustrated by Javaka Steptoe. My Pappy Has a Motorcycle by Isabel Cotero, illustrated by Z.K. Pinier. This is about Daisy and her father and his motorcycle. Every evening, Daisy and her pappy snap on their helmets. Hers is purple with a unicorn. His is a black vintage, and begin to ride on his electric blue motorcycle through Corona, California. At times, they roar past the galleries and murals, and other times they cruise, greeting family and neighbors as they pass by. All the while, Daisy is looking around, absorbing the sights, the sounds, and the smells of her beloved hometown. This book will showcase a neighborhood, all the complexities, all the familiar places, all the familiar smells that happens within your own neighborhood. Read My Pappy Has a Motorcycle and see the different things in the neighborhood that Daisy and her father encounter as they ride through the streets, sometimes going fast and sometimes going slow, so they will have time to speak to their friends, family, and neighbors. My Pappy Has a Motorcycle by Isabel Cotero, illustrated by Ziki Pinier. And the activity on this one is you can color the motorcycle. You remember what color theirs was? Our next book is Me and Nisi by Eloise Greenfield. And this book was written a long time ago, but it's still like in the 70s, but it still speaks volumes today about friends. And I'm going to read this story, Me and Nessie by Eloise Greenfield. And Jan Spivey Gilchrist illustrated the revised edition of this book. It was a good thing for Nisi that mommy couldn't see her, or she would have got a good spanking. Mama couldn't hear her either, but I could. All the time Mama was cornrowing her hair, Nisi kept calling me and waving her arms around, trying to make me look at her. After a while, I got tired of it. Stop it, Nisi, I said. I couldn't play with her all the time, even if she was my best friend. Mama pulled my head back around. Keep your head still, Janelle, she said, and stop talking to yourself. I was talking to Nisi, Mommy, I said. Nobody's in this bedroom but me and you, Mama said. So if you're not talking to me, you're talking to yourself. Your mother don't know nothing, Nisi said. She made a face at Mama. I got scared just thinking about Mama seeing her. Sometimes Mama plays games, but she don't never play games like that. Mama finished my hair and patted it. I could tell I looked pretty by the way she was smiling at me. She said, "Your father ought to be getting back from the train station with Aunt Bee in a little while. You want to help me fix her lunch?" "Don't go, Jadelle," Nisi said. "Let's stay in here and play store." I didn't know which one I wanted to do. I said, "Mama, Nisi wants me to play with her." Mama held her forehead with her hand like she had a headache or something. Then she put her hand on my shoulder and bent down and looked right in my eyes. "All right, Janelle," she said. "But after Aunt B gets here, I don't want to hear another word about that Nisi mess. I guess I can stand you making up a friend, but Aunt B's old and nervous, and I don't want you upsetting her. You hear me?" I said, "Nisi's not made up, Mama. She's real." "You hear me, Janelle," Mama said. I told Mama, all right, but I was sure I could do it. It was hard not to talk about Nisi when she was always doing things. Right now, she was rolling on the floor and laughing. And I knew she was thinking about Aunt B being nervous. I tried to keep from laughing, but I couldn't. I put my hand over my mouth and pointed at Nisi. I knew if Mommy could see her squinching up her eyes and kicking her skinny legs, she would laugh too. But Mama just shook her head and went out. Nisi was laughing so hard she rolled over on top of my new school shoes. "Move, Nisi," I said. "You're messing up my school shoes." She sat up. I thought she was going to yell back at me, like she always does, but she looked like she was going to cry. I went and sat down beside her. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. I said, "We're going to school tomorrow, remember?" Nisi didn't say anything. She had her head down, and I leaned way over so I could see her face better. "Mama says school's going to be fun," I told her. Then we heard Daddy's voice, and Nisa forgot she was sad. She jumped up and ran down the hall. I wanted to yell at her to come back, but I didn't remember what I had promised Mama, so I didn't say anything. I just ran down the hall behind her. Aunt Bee was standing in front of the sofa, leaning heavy on her walking stick and not letting Daddy and Mama help her. Nisi jumped up on the sofa and sat right behind her. I said, "Hi, Aunt Bee," but I was looking at Nisi and Mommy was looking at me looking. "Janelle, baby," Aunt B said, "you pretty as ever. Soon as I sit down, I want you to come over here and give me a great big hug." Nisi was still sitting. She was grinning her bad grin because she knew I wouldn't let nobody mash her. I opened my mouth to tell Aunt B to move over some, but Daddy reached for her arm. "Aunt B," he said, "why don't you sit over here in this chair?" "Keep your hands off me, Walter," Aunt B said. "Just keep your hands off me. I know where I want to sit, and I don't need no help." I saw her knees bend and her bottom start going down. "Aunt B," I yelled, "don't sit on Nisi." Aunt B said, "Huh? Walter, is that child seeing ghosts?" Daddy said, "Take it easy, Aunt B. It's just," but Aunt B didn't take it easy. She said, "I'll get it." She held onto the arm of the sofa and swung her stick in the air. She started beating up the sofa. Nisi was yelling, "Help, help," and scooting around to get out of the way. She crawled down to the other end of the sofa, and then she sat down there looking silly like I did one time when I fell down in the store. "Did I get it, Jadelle?" Aunt B asked. "Did I get it?" I couldn't talk right then, and Mama couldn't talk either. She was holding her forehead. But Daddy said, "I think you got it, Aunt B." Nisi slid down off the sofa. "Let's go back in your room, Janelle," she said. I didn't answer her. I didn't want that stick to start flying again. I just said, "I'll be right back, Aunt B." I closed my door so Aunt B wouldn't hear me talking. Nisi still had that silly look on her face, and I wanted to laugh, but I didn't want to make her feel bad. "Aunt B's tough, ain't she?" Nisi said. I said, "Yeah, Aunt B sure was tough." Nisi said, "You can laugh if you want to, Janelle. I don't care." But I wasn't sure. Then Nisi started laughing, and so did I. "That's what I get, huh, Janelle?" she said. "That's what I get for trying to be so smart." We put our heads under the pillow so nobody could hear, and we laughed a long time. But the next morning, Nisi was sad. She wouldn't get up. I wanted to go to school, but she didn't. She kept her head under the covers while Mommy helped me get ready. When me and Mommy got outside, I heard Nisi calling me, and I looked up at the window. She was waving, and I was waving back. I didn't think about Nisi too much at school. I had a whole lot of fun with my new friends and my teacher. But when I got home, I wanted to tell Nisi all about it, only I couldn't find her. I looked all over and she wasn't there. I called Mama. Shh, Mama said, Aunt Bee's trying to sleep. Mama, I said, I can't find Nisi. Mama said, you can't? She looked glad and sorry at the same time. She put her arm around me. Want me to read you a story? She said. I said, I don't care. Mama sat in the big chair and I sat on my little stool and leaned on her lap. She was reading to me, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking about how sad Nisi looked waving to me out the window and about how she was my best friend and I didn't have nobody to play with before she came. And then I got tickled thinking about how silly she looked when she laughed and all the fun we had. And then I thought about going to school the next day and playing with my new friends. And I would never tell Nisi about them because she was mine, just mine. And then I put my head on Mama's lap like I always do and listen to her read. So from hearing this story, I want you to think about um, who do you think Nisi is to Janelle? Do you think she's a real friend? Do you think she's made up? Do you think it's just someone Janelle played with when she was lonely until she started school? Read Me and Nisi by Eloise Greenfield and pictures by Jan Spivey Gilchrist and get to understand what a special friend can be, even when you can't see them. On the first day of the first grade. And for all of you who started school or you will be starting school, these are some of the things that you will see on the first day of the first grade. This book is by Tish Rabe. The pictures are by Sarah Jennings. On the first day of the first grade, I had fun right away, laughing and learning all day. On the second day of the first grade, I had fun right away, helping in my classroom and laughing and learning all day. On the third day of first grade, I had fun right away, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and learning and laughing all day. On the fourth day of first grade, again, I had fun right away, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the fifth day of first grade, I had fun right away, telling the time. Then I planted little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the sixth day of first grade, I had fun right away, leading friends in line. Then I was telling time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the seventh day of first grade, I had fun right away, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and learning all day. On the eighth day of first grade, I had fun right away performing in a play, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the ninth day of first grade, I had fun right away throwing a ball, performing in a play, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the 10th day of first grade, I had fun right away playing a song, throwing a ball, performing in a play, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. On the 11th day of first grade, I had fun right away counting with coins, playing a song, throwing a ball, performing in a play, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and learning all day. On the 12th day of first grade, I had fun right away, showing my pet bunny, counting with coins, playing a song, throwing a ball, performing in a play, building things with clay, leading friends in line, telling the time, planting little seeds, choosing books to read, helping in my classroom, and laughing and learning all day. First grade is so fun. On the first day of first grade. And so there were 12 things that they did on the first day of first grade. And I want you to try to remember each of the activities that happened on the first day of first through the 12th day of the first grade. And here was some of the things on this activity you see in the pictures, and you can talk to your family about what you see on these pictures. I want to thank you for joining us for our stories today for the month of October, all about different kinds of friendships. And here's a list of books, and all of these books can be located in the library, either your, I know all of them are in the library at San Diego State Children's area, but they could also probably be found in your public or school libraries as well. So enjoy and happy reading, and signing off, Gloria Rhodes, librarian at San Diego State University. Thank you.